Is Mercenary TAO on top? Time for another Dokkan Battle tier list. How's it, everybody? Celtic Link here. We got another Dokkan Battle video for you here today. Now that we have completed the grand tours of both Mercenary TAO, the June Dokkan Fest TUR, and the AGL EZA Ginyu, it is time for our monthly TUR tier list update. As you guys know, we have shifted the way we do tier lists. We do them a little bit differently here on the channel. Not only do we have two separate tier lists, both for long and short events, we also like to update our tier list while maintaining visual of the previous tier list. So you can see here in front of you, this was our last TUR tier list from the end of May with the updated Golden Week units plus the EZA Kefla. So moving into this tier list, we will be focusing on TAO and Ginyu. We like to keep this all together because, of course, right, we know that previous tier lists, right, when we start from scratch, people tend to forget about the units that either move off the tier list or don't show up at all. And I don't like that, right? Just because a unit moves or is shifted slightly out of the top 10 does not mean that unit is bad. So we like to keep that in mind as we go through this. As always, the things we look at when we place our units on the list, we look at consistency, versatility, and power. These are the three main things we will always consider. Number one, with consistency, what is the unit's purpose? What is their function? What do they do? Do they do it well? And do they do it often? Second, we look at versatility. How many different places can they be used? Different events? How many different teams do they have? Do they work well on those different teams? Just because a unit has a ton of different teams doesn't mean they necessarily work well on those teams. So that is a huge factor for our tier list. And then finally, power, right? Sometimes the units just have power, right? This could come in the form of offense or defense. Sometimes a unit's defense is so great that the versatility and consistency don't matter as much, right? They are just that, a raw defensive unit. Offense, same thing. So with that in mind, let's go ahead, let's jump in. Let's start with our medium to long event tier list, because this is the one that you're going to be utilizing and focusing on more often than others. So this was the last update we did. We had Goku at top, Kefla at number 2, Hit at number 3, Goku at number 4, Glorio at 5, Path to Power Kid Goku EZA at 6, we had Daima Vegeta at 7, Janemba, Pikkon, and AGL Cell, with many other TURs kind of floating around in what we call the honorable mention zone. All of these units are viable, useful, and 10th anniversary content, but they may not necessarily have a place at the top 10. If we were to order them, they would all rank anywhere between the top, 10 to 25 units. Like, they're all still really good. So the question is, where does TAO line in with this? So let's start with the Dokkan Fest, and then we'll move into the EZA. So for TAO, he has it all. Let's be completely honest. When we talk about TAO, not only does he have a great leader skill, mission execution, and Earthbred Fighters opens up a lot of possibilities for him. He also gets an incredible amount of stats. Like, even if we ignore this, which only has a few places where it can be fully active, right, where if the enemy is stunned, right, there's only a few places where you can fully activate this. Even if we ignore that, right, we're still talking about a unit that is throwing out 60 to 90 million supers, depending on how many key spheres you get. And his average rainbow key is going to be about 4 key spheres, and for each one of those he's going to get about 200% attack and defense. So again, that equates 3 key spheres, you're averaging 60 million super. That's still really good. So he is pretty consistent, right? He has a function, he does it well, he has raw attack power, and he's got, no matter where you put it, he's gonna do it, as long as you have that mission execution condition met, right, to allow him to change rainbow key spheres on the first turn. And then, of course, you know, he will need some help with the rainbow keys, but it's honestly not that hard. A lot of his great partners do have that ability to change key spheres. A lot of his teams have great rainbow key sphere changers, so it's honestly not that bad. Moving into versatility, this is kind of where he falls, right? Unfortunately, just due to the nature of him being mercenary TAO, right, he doesn't have too many places he can be used. He's got mission execution, Earthbred fighters, Dragon Ball Seekers, Earthlings, DB Saga, Sibling Spawn, Target Goku, Sworn Enemies. Sworn Enemies, Target Goku, Sibling Spawn, like these are not real categories right now. There's not really any leaders for them. DB Saga is, you know, basically, I mean, depending on your setup, basically his own team or Kid Goku's team, so like that's a really good team. Earthlings, same thing, not really a real team at the moment unless you count TAO's team itself, which I mean would fail the test of versatility. Seekers, we have a few teams, right? The Diamond teams can work well. He can work well on Earthbred fighters, is basically the 10th anniversary teams, and then his own mission execution. So in terms of versatility, he doesn't have much of that. He can slide into these teams quite easy, but I mean, he's very, very limited in the places he's going to be. Second to that, right, the thing that limits him further is, you can see here, right, his link skills, right? He doesn't have too many people he can link well with and be effective. He's basically got his cyborg version, or blue, and then everyone else like almost units that are unusable. And again, he can do well without the links, but I mean, the support added from blue or like his cyborg versions really do help him out a lot. So I would definitely say that that kind of takes him a tier down under versatility. And then finally, power. As we already mentioned, he's got raw power in spades. Again, easily able to clear 80 to 90 million supers depending on your key sphere levels, amount of support, and the enemy status condition, right? If you were to fully activate his passive, he's throwing out a easily over 120 mil super, and if you manage to fight an enemy that he can counter, right, here, where is it? If you can fight an enemy he can counter, right, he's going to be countering with tremendous power, which is a 300% multiplier. And I mean, if we're talking like major fights here, right, like, you know, that's half of the Jiren fight under Goku's story. Same with the Vegeta story Jiren. That's also Cell Max in Battle Hardened Formidable Foes. Outside of the AoE, he can counter both of the major supers from him. As well, he can also counter, that's blue Vegeta, he can also counter blue Goku super, right? Basically locking down one of the hardest fights in the game. So he's got raw power in spades, both from his own power and from his counters. So given that, the question is, where would I put him on the long tier list? Honestly, people are going to call me crazy for this, but legitimately, like, I would probably move him right here at number 5, right? And so this would basically shift the whole list down a notch, right? Moving this and then moving AGL Cell into the honorable mention. He is that good. I don't quite feel that he's better than Hit, Kefla, Goku. I mean, I would even, you know, I could see an argument of placing him above Daimagoku, definitely above Glorio. Although Glorio does have really good use on TAO's team now, right, now that he has access to a 220%. You know, Glorio's very hit or miss in these new fights, and especially with him, the two majorist fights, you know, dodge canceling at the end, it can really be a danger for him, especially if he fails those additional supers. And so that's why I've kind of moved Glorio down from where I had him before and moved up Daimagoku. Daimagoku has an incredible advantage. He doesn't need a ton of extra supers to tank, double-digit tank the normals. But his added support in slot 2 or slot 3 help him out. Whereas the Glorio, he's always going to be in slot 3. He runs a big risk of getting locked. It's kind of the reason. But I mean, I could completely understand, even if you wanted to move, if you were someone who felt that Glorio was above Daimagoku, and therefore you put him above Tao. Like, this, legitimately, these three, I would say, could go in any order. Personally, I would place Tao above, and Daimagoku slightly above. He's a lot more useful on the 10th because of the 10th. His placement on the 10th anniversary teams is really what it is for Daimagoku. That's really what he has over it for me. But I feel like this is a pretty good place. Now, with Ginyu, right? Ginyu's an interesting placement because I'm going to be completely honest. He kind of, like, he's not bad, right? He's not terrible. But like, if we look at the major fights, right? Battle hardened formidable foes is right out of the question for him. If he wants to if he wants to function here, right, the main issue, like I'm gonna come back to this, right, because really this ranking is more so for the long events or for the short events, so I'm gonna come back to this in a minute. But I mean, it's right out of the question for him. For the other events, like the Vegeta, the Goku, the Jirens, right, he's not going to function well in those fights unless you meet his condition here. Otherwise, he's kind of risky in his this condition here. He's kind of risky until you can transform him, because his attack and defense is far too low without that condition met. So in terms of consistency, right, he is, when you have your Ginyu Force allies, he is consistent. The issue is meeting that condition, right? 5 Ginyu Force allies is just enough. At best, with Raccoon and Goldo, these guys here who just EZA'd, you're getting 5 links and you're getting half of that passive activation, pretty much. And that is typically more than enough to get him by in these fights. Some of the bigger supers can kind of catch him off guard, especially if you end up having to go pre-super because of the locking from Topo and Jiren here. So I mean, that can be an issue for him, but otherwise, you know, he's pretty consistent with the Ginyu Force allies. But the fact that they need that really brings him down in the next category, the versatility. He just doesn't have it, right? Without the Ginyu Force allies, he is incredibly hit or miss. To make matters worse, right, he, after the 4th turn below 70% is when you can transform him into the Goku Ginyu, and the Goku Ginyu loses all of that passive entirely, which means even if you had it, right, he's going to take almost a 200% drop in power, meaning you'll have to rebuild his attack once transformed, which in the later stage of the fights can be a problem. It puts you in a greater position, more likely to get supered on the wrong units. Now, to be fair, when in the Goku Ginyu, assuming you've built up enough defense, he also has an additional 50% damage reduction. That basically means, like, if you built up 5 million defense with 50% damage reduction, you're going to be tanking, you know, up to 10 million supers, which is pretty good, right? That will definitely help in Festival of Battles. But again, the issue is taking that 70% damage. In Festival of Battles, like, it's just not possible. Not until way later on, and at that point, it's kind of risky, because then you may not be able to deal enough attack with him to justify anything, to justify the transformation. Secondly, with the like the Jiren fights, for example, it's a little more consistent getting out Ginyu, and he can be helpful there. But again, the drop in power significantly slows down the transition from this fight to this fight. And with 500 million HP, right, like, not a whole lot compared to the 1 billion or 1.5 billion or the 2 billion that the Festival of Battles fight. It's still enough that it could, you know, it could bring you a whole extra 10 minutes just against AGL Jiren alone because of that. So consistency and versatility, he really does fail the bar there. And then unfortunately, same goes for power, right? He just doesn't have it, right? He's if we were to use the appropriate term of mid, that's what he is, right? He's middle of the road. He's not bad in terms of power, in terms of defense, in terms of offense, but he's not great either. His both his defense and his offense stack incredibly slow, meaning he's honestly one of the worst options for festival battles. He stacks okay enough for the Jiren fights, but it's just not enough to justify bringing him. Like, I would honestly bring other units who don't stack on TAO's team than this guy, which is another ding on him on versatility. He basically only has TAO's team or his own leader skill to work on, and his own leader skill, obviously being a 200% leader, has its own issues at the current moment. So really, he kind of just falls into the honorable mention section. He's not bad, he's not terrible, but several of the units here, just in the honorable mention section alone, are significantly better than him, in my opinion. So that's kind of where we're looking at for the long events, right? The festival of battles and the red zones, more so the red zones. Festival battles, we kind of just focus, we just acknowledge that, you know, hey, these units might be good there, but this is kind of where we're looking for long events. And honestly, having used them a little bit more, I do think I want to make an adjustment. I want to move Pycon up and Janemba to the honorable mentions, and not that he's not bad, but a lot has changed since April, and I'd like to move Cell to number 10. Cell is definitely in a much better position than the last time we spoke about this, and I think number 10 is a good spot. Janemba is still kind of homeless right now. Not that he doesn't have any bad teams. He's got some good teams, and he's really good on them, but Cell's team now being more fully fleshed out, I do feel like he kind of slides in at number 10 here. And the rest of the list, I think, is pretty solid. And again, with 4 through 6, I definitely think you can make an argument for a switch. Same through for 2 and 3, right? It Hit or Kefla, I could see either one going 2 or 3. Number 1, I mean, I could see your argument if you want to say Hit, but to be completely honest, I think Goku, at the current moment, Kid Goku kind of clears everyone else. So that is it for the long event tier list. So let's check in on our Battle Hardened Formidable Foes, our short event tier list. If we were to place Tao, honestly, Tao gets a big buff, probably above a lot of the others. In fact, I would move him above Daima Vegeta and move him below these guys here. Still keeping with this, Janemba is actually really good for these short events, just because he's always going to be he's basically going to be invincible in these fights, so that's kind of where he stays with this. But Tao, because of his versatility and in the teams that he can bring, a lot of the major units needed to clear, like this Cell Max fight, are you know, he slides right into those teams, and he helps a lot because of his counter to the major supers that he can deal. He's basically, outside of the AoE, he can basically lock him down. Same goes for power, right? Like the amount of power he throws out due to the low HP that these fights have, right? He can, you know, he's easily helping you clear these phases, right? Like we look 100,000 HP, like he could easily knock out, you know, a quarter of his HP, and then your slot 2 units takes down the second unit. Same goes for this one, you know, throwing out like a single rotation with just Tao alone on it could easily clear this guy in a turn if he crits, right? And God forbid he gets a double super. So definitely Tao, I think, I definitely think Tao easily clears the number 3 slot here above a lot of our other units. Ginyu, unfortunately, he is just right out of the question, as I said, for this fight, right? These fights are too short for him to, you'll likely just barely, with the turn 4 condition, right? With that turn 4 condition on his transformation, right, 70% or less, that means you'll just be transforming him on what is likely your final turn. And then, of course, that means you have to be 70% or less. So that means someone has to get a super here, you know, on his team, which may not necessarily be great. I mean, his partners like Raccoon and Goldo, they can tank those supers from like Cell Max, for example, pretty easily. Same with you know, Jason Berger. But again, him being tied to those units really hurts him in a fight like this, because you don't have the time to play around with those rotations to get him set up. And then him himself can't tank these supers, especially in the later parts of the fights. He's going to be reliant on his dodge, if you can get him transformed at that point, especially for the AoE. So he's kind of right out of the question for this. So he falls into the honorable mentions. He's usable, but not that usable for this fight. And then I did want to throw in here that Int Boo, right, while an Artemal mention, I would probably throw him still here in number 10 and move off Janima. This is another adjustment I wanted to make. Having played around with some of these teams a little bit more, especially with Int Boo being on mission execution, I definitely feel that Int Boo kind of moves up a little bit. He's definitely a lot more, I mean, he's always been useful in this fight, but now that he kind of has a real good place on it, I definitely say that he deserves a slot in the top 10 for Battle Hardened Formidable Foes. So, guys, that is our tier list, right? As always, we like to do the double tier list here so we can see the difference between ranking these short events and these long events. We can see that Dokkan is creating events and units that cater to both, right? Some units are more designed for long events such as Kefla, Goku, and Hit, while we get other units more designed for these short events that have come out, like I mean, TAO kind of works in both, to be completely honest, outside of Festival of Battles, but we also get units like the Kaioken Goku or the Cell, or these guys who work a lot better in these short events. So guys, that is it for our video. That is our top 10 TUR tier list for the month of June. If you guys like the video, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you have not already, and in the comments down below, let us know, how would you rank these top 10 TURs? This is my personal ranking, of course. If you have any disagreements, feel free to let us know in the comments down below how you would rank them. You know, I could definitely see a lot of changes being made, but this is based on the 3 criteria that I have always given for these units. Let us know what you think in the comments down below. Otherwise, guys, as always, thanks for watching, and aloha.